I forgot one thing about the previous lecture, and that was during the previous lecture I did not mention, I think, that Utopia 2 was written in Latin and it was later on translated in English. And it is a very important point uh, as regards to Utopia because they can ask you which language the Utopia was first written in and later on translated. So they can ask you such questions. And probably mostly they ask these questions because commonly people think that Utopia must be first published in English, but it was not the case, and it was published around the year 1551, and it was during the same time, and it is it was reprinted in 1551, although it was written previously in uh, in the time of Henry VIII, and it was not an Elizabethan writer. And Elizabethan age, and one more thing, which a clarification in fact, which is very important, that Renaissance and Elizabethan age are often connected together, and they are always many times confused together. Uh, because a few books which we mentioned yesterday, or a few books which are like guidebooks, they often connect Renaissance with the Elizabethan age, and therefore they do not describe the three or four writers that come between this, and that misses the link between how the medieval age or the age of Chaucer was transformed into Elizabethan age. And if we have this link of about 50 years or 100 years, then almost 50 years, or you can say 75 years. So if we bridge this gap with the proper understanding of the Renaissance, when it was beginning in England and it was not at its prime, in Elizabethan age, the Renaissance was at its prime. It uh, and never such flourishing was ever seen on the face of England, and it was due to uh, both things: the political stability and also the literary stability, or the stability in learning due to Renaissance. Okay, and an important thing which we see in Renaissance and the previous learning is that the previous scholars used to come out of the monasteries, and they were well versed in Christian religion, and they were established and supported by the church. But in Renaissance, or the writers before Renaissance and during Renaissance, they were uh, the university people. They got their degrees from the universities, from the Cambridge and Oxford and other universities from other parts of Europe. And they were literary people. They were scholars of philosophy as well as religion. And their knowledge of philosophy allowed them to have a spirit of questioning, and that was the reason that they questioned the church. And when they questioned the church or the preachings of church, they were persecuted. Many were persecuted, but they never stopped. And they called themselves the Reformists, and later on they were the Protestants, and before that they were the followers of Wycliffe, the Lollards, and then they became the Reformers. Then they became the Puritans. Sorry, Protestants. Later on, they became the Puritans, and when the Puritans were persecuted, the Protestants were, you can say, they were shrinking in numbers. But Protestants were the Christians who were, you can say, quite well grounded in their religion, and they wanted to reform the religion, and they wanted to put an end to the corrupt practices of the religion. So now I'm going back to the writers of the age, and an important writer of the age was William Tyndale. And why Tyndale is important. And Tyndale was a Protestant person, was a Protestant conventionalist or controversialist. You can say conventionalist. When I say conventionalist, I mean that he was adherent to the Protestant principles. He focused only on the fully on the Protestant principles. That is what I mean when I say someone is conventionalist and conventionally Protestant. And he was exiled to Germany, and he published a very good translation of the Bible, of the New Testament, and it was based on the authority, the proper authority of the Greek text. He translated not from the translation of Wycliffe, or because Wycliffe wrote in the medieval English, the Old English. Tyndale did not attempt to translate the Wycliffian model, but he came up with a new model, or with a new translation, which was based on the translation, yes, translation of Bible, of the New Testament. And he translated from the Greek model, from the Greek copy of the Bible. He translated from there. And although you can see, or anyone who is reading, who reads both the Wycliffe's translation and Tyndale's translation, he can see the influence of Wycliffe on it, but still it was quite different. And also it was influenced by Luther's translation. Martin Luther translated the Bible, the New Testament, into German language because he was a German person. I think I must write this. Martin Luther translated the New Testament so here we go. And it was a new sort of translation, and it produced a sort of a fresh air, or it breathed a fresh air into the Protestant ideals, or the Protestants who were being persecuted at that time, and who were not politically stable at that time. They were not accepted by the society, and it is the basis of all other translations which were translated by the Protestants after that. One thing must be clear here, that the translation of the Catholics is different from the translation of the Protestants because of the point of view. Because in translation, you have point of views, and you are not translating the exact text. You are translating that from the exact text, but you are not translating the perspective of that writer, or the original writer. You are establishing your own, or you are coming up with your own understanding of the text. So the Protestant translation is different from the Catholic translation, and William Tyndale's translation is copied, or is followed, or is or inspired. It inspires it inspired actually the new translations that were coming out of the Protestant school. So there is a marked difference between the Protestants and the conventional Roman Catholic Church now. So, and if you just see here that the Protestants are gradually gaining ground in England, partly because they were learned men, and partly because of their disconnection with the Roman Catholic Church. And the common people were following the new church because they were calling themselves now the English people. They had their own national identity, and when there is nationalism involved, they become and any nation can become patriot. And they were very patriot, and they were very proud that they had their own church, and then they were translating new things. And by the way, the Matthew's Bible, if you know the Matthew's Bible, which is also a translated work, Matthew's Bible is, if you hear Dr. Zakir Naik, he refers to this book many times, Matthew's Bible. It is also a translated work by the Protestants. And it is the accepted version because it is inspired from the work of William Tyndale, and it describes the basic principles of Christianity. So now we come to the pure literary work or the pure literary writers, and these are uh, Jack White and sorry, White, yes, and Lord of Earl of Surrey, not the Lord of Surrey. It was Sir Thomas White and Earl of Surrey. I think I have given the spellings in the list, but still, Thomas White. It is not like white color; it is white, but still it is pronounced white. Uh, Sir Thomas White, he was a person of learning. He had his MA from Cambridge University, and at the age of 19 or 20, he was a graduate from Cambridge University, and later on he was appointed uh, in the court, and he was under a high position and under king's favor, and he enjoyed uh, very much. Although he died very early, he died at the age of 39, and that is why we don't have too much of his works left. He died at the age of 39 when he was going on a mission. Sorry, it was not a mission, it was on an errand, which was he was sent by the king to meet an emissary from Scotland, or sorry, from Spain. And while he was going there, he caught cold and he died at the age of 39. Although his work, although he died young and quite very young as compared to Chaucer and Wycliffe and all the other writers, and he died very young, but still we have a considerable number of his sonnets. And what he did is very important for English literature. Sometimes we just satisfy ourselves by saying that Chaucer is the father of English poetry, and then we consider, or we consider that it is implied in that every poetry or every form of poetry was originated by Geoffrey Chaucer, or if we know about Chaucer, we know everything about poetry. But this is not the case. Uh, Wyatt has very important contribution to the English literature, and that is why he is known as one of the major writers. He is not a minor writer; he is the major writer, although he died young. And what he did, he was very like Chaucer. He used to go to Italy on the missions from the king, and during his visits, being a literary person, he was inspired by the Italian poetry, and he tried to convey the whole of Italian poetry into the forms used in Italian poetry, and he turned them into English poetry, or he introduced them into English poetry. And here I would like to point out one thing, which is very historically, which is very important, and also with the it is related with the understanding of literature, especially poetry. That the idea of sonnets was not purely from the Italian literature; it was purely from uh, French poetry, and France has a district which is known as Provence, and it is in southern France. Provence. I would write the name here. And remember this point because I would ask it again when I will be teaching John Keats, which is very important writer in the Romantic age, and you must know this story if you want to understand Keats. In this district of France, they had a very delightful climate, and it is a very beautiful district. And at that time, they had introduced lyrical forms of poetry, and they used to sing and dance on that. And later on, this form was adopted by Italy, by the Italian poets, and they took up the style, and they converted it into their own style, or they perhaps they modified it, and from there, they introduced, the Italian poets introduced a 14 line poems, which is known as the sonnet. So the sonnet is the offshoot, or was originated from the original lyrical poetry of the French province, which is French district, which is known as Provence. It is not province, it is Provence, the name of the district in France. It is in southern France. And from here, from the lyrical poetry, it was taken up by the Italian poets, and it was modified into a 14-line poems. And the subject matter of a sonnet, do you know what is the subject matter of the sonnet? Anyone? Subject matter of the sonnet is, it cannot be, you can say, yes, the subject matter or theme. I am asking about the theme. What is the theme of the sonnet? Like elegies are written in a sad mode, and sonnets are actually a form of love poetry. And yes, it is not love, it is love, yes. uh, so uh, love poetry is the basic purpose of sonnet, of writing the sonnet. And do you know why John Milton converted or wrote religious sonnets? Do you know? He wrote religious sonnets on his 12th birthday and all these, because he considered love with his connection with God is more important than his connection with human beings, which was quite right. Although he was a Christian, but it was quite right from his point of view. And the greatest master of the sonnet is Petrarch. Petrarch, which you know that he was Italian, who was an Italian poet. So Wyatt used this literary form, and he used it to write love poetry. And if you study the courses of Punjab University and Sargodha University, you will find that the poetry of Wyatt is referred to as the love sonnets of Wyatt and Surrey. Do you remember this? Perhaps you don't remember this because uh, no one gives so much focus on the course outline. People just want to study. But you are also asked, yes, commonly members, and you are also asked to write about the love poetry or the theme of love in the sonnets of Wyatt and Surrey. And this is the reason that you have to find out, you have to write about love in the poems of Wyatt and Surrey. And this is the reason. So Wyatt introduced this form of poetry, the sonnets, into English literature, and his innovations or his introduction or his modification to the English poetry can be defined in a few points, which I'm going to tell you now. Sound issue. I think I must speak a bit louder, and it will be okay. So, what are the reformations in the literature, or what are the innovations in literature by Wyatt? The first one is that he imitated Petrarch, and he introduced the subject matter of love poetry in English language or English literature. And he wrote, the Italian people, when they wrote the love poetry, they were writing like our poets, that if they do not find their beloved, they are going to die out, or they are going to kill themselves, like we Meet Dard or Meet Takimi and Mirza Ghalib and all the other poets, and the Persian poets, the Arab poets, everyone was writing about if they do not find their love or their beloved one, they will die out. But in England, when Wyatt wrote, he wrote in a way that if he is unable to find his beloved, he will continue to live on, and he will continue to love, but he will not die for her. And this is, you can say, the arrogance or the nature of that time, the nature of the people of England at that time, because they had their own identity, and they were engrossed in nationalism and all that. So this is the way you can understand how the times do affect the poetry of a person. Although he did not want to describe the political situation of England, but still, even if he is not describing it, you still find some of the political elements in literature. And this is very important to note, because we will discuss or we will expand on this when I'll be teaching post-colonial literature, because the post-colonial literature stems out of the idea of post-colonial literature stems out of the connection between literature and politics. So the first thing that he imitated Petrarch, but he did not imitate the theme. He imitated the form, but he did not imitate the theme exactly. Sorry, he did not imitate the theme exactly. And then the second point is that he introduced sonnet in English poetry, which is very important. The first thing is that he introduced love poetry. The second is he introduced the sonnet into English poetry. And there is a difference between the Petrarchan sonnet and the rhyme scheme of the Petrarchan sonnet and the sonnet of Wyatt. And I think I will discuss it later on when we will expand on just on the writer's works and their stanzas, because we have two other forms of stanzas: the Shakespearean sonnet, Shakespearean sonnet, and Spenserian sonnet. And when I will discuss the Spenserian sonnet, Shakespearean sonnet, I will discuss the sonnet of Wyatt. I mean the technical elements in it. The third one is that his poetry, which is an important point in his poetry. Should I write all these points? Yes, I think. The introduction of love theme, intro to sonnet, and the third one is which is important regarding his poetry. It was not an innovation, but it is regarding his poetry that his poetry is not mature. His poetry is not mature, and then there is the use of conceit. Conceit is a literary device which I will discuss when I will be discussing John Donne, and his a very important introduction was Horatian satire. Horatian satire, and you must note what Horatian satire is. Horatian satire is a poem which reflects on the follies of the people. Horatian satire is the poem written in satirical form. It is, you can say it is satirical, but it reflects on the follies of people. Okay, it is not a satire like you say the satire of Jonathan Swift. It is very harsh satire. But this satire is not like this. His satire is Horatian satire, which is a mild form of satire, or it reflects just on the follies of the people. And these are the elements of the important elements which you must note about the poetry of Thomas Wyatt. And Thomas Wyatt is, you can also pronounce him Wyatt sometimes, because the old English pronunciation was different, quite different from the modern English pronunciation. But in modern language, if you are in an interview or you are presenting something, you must pronounce it White. But if you hear from someone, Thomas Wyatt or Thomas something, then you must not think that he does not know the pronunciation. Might be he is using the old pronunciation, or might be he had some sort of key to his to the old English pronunciation. So this is all about Sir Thomas Wyatt. Now I go to his disciple, or disciple is his poetical disciple, or his student, his poetical disciple, poetical student, or sorry, poetical disciple, who is known as Earl of Surrey. And the real name of Earl of Surrey is Henry Howard. And this is very important question. Henry Howard. The real name of Earl of Surrey is Henry Howard, and you must know it because they can ask you such sort of questions. And note this down. And when I say something is important, you must highlight it on your registers or wherever you are writing. And Earl of Surrey, he was he died very tragically at the age of 30. He died very tragically, and he was not involved in any sort of prison, but people alleged, or people laid a blame on him that he was accused of being involved in a prison. And at that time the kings were not very considerate of thinking that someone's life is important than their own life, or someone's life is as important as their lives. And they just used to cut off the head of the person who is involved in satire, or sorry, who is involved in prison, or who is, they just get an idea that he is going to be involved in prison in future. They will just kill him. So Earl of Surrey, or Henry Howard, was involved in a case of prison, and the king at that time was very bloodthirsty, and he just killed him off. And it is one of the brutal crimes, of course, which are still known in the history of England. It is crime. It is a crime to kill a person without having a proper trial. But at that time, there were no proper trials. The word of the king was the final word, and when the king said that he must be killed, and he was killed. But at the age of 30, but still, he did something very important. And what he did, the first thing which he did was he improved the fluency in the style of Wyatt. He improved the versification, and when he improved the versification, it rendered a sort of fluency and to the sonnet which Wyatt had introduced earlier. And the second book, which is very important, and second important contribution, it is not a work, it is a contribution, which he did was bringing of the pentameter in blank verse. The blank verse iambic pentameter. Blank verse iambic pentameter. He is the one who brought this form of poetry into English poetry, and he bore it from the Italian poets. Again, everything is coming out from the Italian poetry, and it was going to become the meter of English poetic drama in future. When we study the drama of Christopher Marlowe and the drama of William Shakespeare, we find this verse being used, the blank verse in iambic pentameter, and also a work of a very important poetical work, which is Paradise Lost. It is also written in iambic pentameter, but in blank verse, and all this is indebted to the poetry of Surrey, the Earl of Surrey, or Henry Howard, as he was called. So, and it is, I think there was a book which they wrote together, or no, they never wrote together. Uh, their their sonnets were published sometimes afterwards. Their sonnets were published together. That's why we know them together. And because one of the reasons was that they were contemporaries, and they were also a relationship of student teacher, and also both of them, they died very young, and there are not many works of these poets which exist, and they just wrote sonnets, and these sonnets can be read in a compendium which is easily available. These are writers who are easily available. By the way, whatever we have read up till now is easily available from the internet, and it is easily available in libraries, so you can get anything, whatever you want from libraries, if you want to study them. And I recommend studying Utopia. If you want to study something during these days, you can study Utopia, Thomas More's Utopia. And if you have not studied Chaucer's Prologue to Canterbury Tales, then you must study that. And if you have studied Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, then there is no need to go back to that, and you can just study this one. So Thomas More's Utopia. And everyone who has not studied Wyatt's sonnets or Petrarch's sonnets, yes, you have some questions related to prologue. Yes, you can ask them in the next class, or you can ask them right now, from, or you can just text me and I will reply if you are the only one who wants to know about the questions about the prologue. And if anyone has not, I was saying that if anyone has not read the sonnets of Wyatt and Surrey, then he must read at least one sonnet from each, one sonnet from Wyatt and one sonnet from Surrey. And I recommend you to study the summary of Thomas More's Utopia, and you can say that this is the homework.